Hello, I'm back to do another one of my weekly messages with the Christ-centric theme. Well, I also went back to wearing my protection glasses because I'm just kind of used to them now. You can see the blue light reflecting off them. Even more distracting than just not having a virtual background, which... Oh, well, this way as well. With the now you can see my computer. So I have a new arrangement. Oh, now you can see my bed too. No, the bed sheet's not even. Oh well. Oh well. But this fits into the theme of this week that I want to talk about. Everybody's life has some mess. Nobody has it all together. I know that sometimes, so there's a few things that I've been inspired from others, and so I don't want to mention everybody here because sometimes people are just sensitive about me taking others' stuff and somewhat either not getting permission or seemingly doing it out of context. So I don't necessarily have to mention every instance of inspiration I get from others, but some of the things that I've been getting is that even as somebody who's speaking on God's behalf, it's okay to admit that you don't always have it to always. It's okay to present yourself sometimes because you don't have it all together. Because you know what, so that's something my classmate has mentioned. That's something that I heard been mentioned by others, and it's just like what, in reality, everybody has some areas of improvement other than Jesus. So I mean, even though I know it's hard because sometimes you read about people like, oh my God, I can't believe they did this, and then you read about people who are like, okay, well oh, and then some people just think well, this person did that, and then they lost their job at the church. They deserve that to happen to them. But and then we look at these things and we sometimes we just look too much as like, oh, how can this person as this church leader do that? And then we just don't really give the grace there. We're just like, well, you know what? At the same time, I don't have to agree with what this person has done, or I don't have to think that okay, this is how a person should live out their life for Christ. They should be doing this. But at the same time, you can look at it with grace and be like, well, that person has done this, and no, it doesn't conform to Jesus' ideals on earth. But and yes, maybe I also agree with the church's decision to um, basically maybe even beyond firing has excommunicated that person. But at the same time, it's like, well, you gotta look at it. It's like, okay, well, um, you know, I think even Paul, he says you excommunicate the person not for the intention of excommunicating the person, but to actually try to use that to be like, hey, this person needs to wake up and actually repent and go back to God. And, the purpose of excommunication is not like it's the same as imprisonment, where Paul was like sometimes in Paul himself he's in chains for the gospel, where it's like but not necessarily because he did something that was like, okay, Paul committed adultery, therefore he's in prison. That's why, because Paul, it wasn't that wasn't necessarily the case, but so basically even Paul was saying like, if I had committed adultery and you want to excommunicate me for that, but he's like, but he's saying that the purpose is not to basically like death sentence the person, but also to like use that as a way to like be like, hey, you know what, this is not something that God would want if it's like sort of like I'm imitating that God is also upset with you through this excommunication, but it's not meant to be like, okay, this is how God is gonna always treat you now, from now forevermore, because of what you've done. So the whole point of this message today, even though I'm also doing it out of position of weakness, I should be going to sleep soon and all that. So I want to talk about that we all have weaknesses. And I'm late on this sermon. I had to rearrange the room, had to try to do some of my homework. I had to play catch up from last week's homework because I was not keeping up with the bulletin. I was like, oh my goodness. But anyways, and then everything just came crashing down. But prior to that, I really needed a time of just praying and just kind of going in an extended 1 week just prayer, just all like pretty much like devoted most of my week to prayer, and I think that helped me to heal. It also helped me to kind of discern better of like how I'm gonna continue this project of just doing these messages every week. And I think that doing these messages every week is still a good thing. I may not be the most talented preacher. I decided that maybe biblical studies is still a way for me to go, and maybe as you can see from like if some of you have been following, I'm not sure if anyone's been following. Not everybody's a bunch of readers, so this is the most recent entry. The recent entries I kind of introduced myself a bit more in my blog. I'm going with smaller screen so you can see less of my background, but also like it's less video size. So there's a lot of reading here that's not anything that necessarily directly related to what I'm talking about in this video, but it does give you a better viewpoint of my background and context and all that stuff. So, and the reason I did that is because of some weeks ago I decided like, you know what, I want to put my skin in the game. It's about time that people kind of know the man behind all this work, and the author has reviewed himself. Like Once Upon a Time style, the author is reviewed, and that's me right there. Ta-da-da! Yeah, it's like K 1.0, and still K 1.0, I guess. But it's nothing about. It's not about the 1.0, 2.0, whatever. Back to my undergrad days. It's all about, whether or not you are continue to like make progression. So I think in terms of blogging, hopefully I've been, I've had, as you can see in the timeline, I've had many years of practicing blogging. I started off, my first post, and then, I guess I took a bit of a hiatus after that month. No, actually, no, that was the end of the year anyway, so. But then and then I realized that what, God can like just like in Thessalonians, like there's some things that in this blog that like I had like just like didn't know that I was like hey it might have some foretelling in somebody's life So then I realized that when I look at the bigger picture, I'm just like other people have not started their blog yet. Maybe they can get inspired to start their blog. And other people obviously maybe going through some of these things that I've been going through back in the days, like when they were like now that they're also going through that stage in life, back then I was doing my undergrad, and and I decided to start a blog. So at the same time I like around the same time I was like just still in the middle of my undergrad, or the beginning stages of undergrad is when I also kind of start blogging. But anyways, and I also continued that habit into like just throughout my life, and there's been a bit of a hiatus, and it wasn't even for busyness, because I know some people were like, oh, if you're busy, like you shouldn't waste your time on a blog. You gotta spend time on schoolwork and looking for work, and it's like what's the merit of having a blog? But at the same time, I realized that what God can use us even in our weaknesses. And during this time, it's no job, no school. It was just like, it was part of my Sabbath time. And it's like, I just like stopped blogging. And it's almost like the years of silence that Bruxy had talked about in one sermon the other day. It's like, you gotta wait for the prophecies to come true. And apparently, I re-prophesized, and apparently some of it has come true, but apparently, I meant the night is darkest right before the dawn, but somebody might have been inspired. But hey, why don't I just, maybe, maybe now it's like, because apparently, it's like I said, you never know what kind of foretelling you might do with other people, And lo and behold, the same year, I realized that this might have been enough to inspire somebody that I know to start a church. Who knows? See, you never know what God can do with your life, So sometimes, you should not, even though I had weaknesses and I stopped believing and I didn't want to, I didn't want to, like, really blog anymore. This is just old blog from 2010 reposted. It's like, apparently somebody might have read it. That's just me commenting on my own blog, by the way, as I felt lonely. But it doesn't mean that, you never know who you can reach. So where is it? It's like, do you see this? I was like, wait a minute. I was like, this is actually coming true, I've joined the vision now, I'm part of the church, but, I didn't realize that, that I had also maybe seeded something. Well, even if I didn't seed it directly to the pastor's heart, I seeded something in God's heart, and now it's, it's coming to fruition, And I think it's great, you know. So the co-visioning here, right? As I said, the co-vision. I am now part of this church that also has started the same year. So I was like, oh, pretty good. I was like, I realized that, hey, you know, God might have been doing something. I just didn't realize, you know, like that's kind of how it is. You know, when the Old Testament prophets start talking about Jesus, they didn't realize, like, you know, that Jesus is going to come fulfill this. They just, like, you know, I just say it as it is. It's mostly like, as we learn in the Old Testament, it's foretelling. So we just say it as it is, you know, in the Old Testament classes. Just we say it as it is, but we didn't know that God is also going to be like, also going to foretell, you know, like forecast of what God is going to Jesus could do for Jesus in the future. So, anyways, I gotta see if I can pick up my keyboard to kind of find it here. I don't know. So I'm just gonna take it that that's really his name, even though it's a little bit unusual to have a junior. And there we go. I just got a little lost. Sometimes you can't. It's hard to see the text between the paragraphs, you know. But hey, you know. So I also now, you know, I also go to a church that is also 4 letters, and there is somebody there named Rich. So so I was like, oh, wait a minute. And then, you know. And then it's like, hey, you know, that's pretty cool. You know, I think, you know, there might have been some foretelling there. You know, so, you know, the night is darkest right before the, you know, the 4-letter church, which I do talk about later. So, the reason why I don't want to say it here is because I don't want to discourage you. But like, wait a minute, it's like what? It's like, what are you talking about? Well, if you keep reading, if you keep reading, you know, especially if you go to 2020, you know, when there's co-visioning, as I said in the blog, you will see what I'm talking about. So that's why I don't want to, you know, give you all the spoilers. You know, it's not that I don't want to, it's not that I haven't necessarily done that in other contexts, but also I realized, hey, you know, I quoted from Ephesians 5 here, and I also in 2020 did a sermon on Ephesians 5. So it's coming full circle, you know. But apparently my sermon in Ephesians 5 also talked about I don't know. It had the wording of even our dreams, so maybe like people didn't understand. So the context. So maybe if I search for even dreams here, I might have mentioned it in another post a long time ago. Ah, so this is way back. No wonder I couldn't even remember my own context 14 years ago, possibly. But is this? Let me just see. This is the one. This is the post. Well, it does talk about dreams and Joseph and. I don't know. Anyways, I decided that not necessarily to pause stuff when I'm looking for stuff. So it's just to show a little bit of a weakness, but it doesn't mean I should spend too much of your time showing you my weaknesses. So the fact that I didn't have a lot of time this week to prepare, and that's not a thing, because I was like debating, it's like, oh my goodness, like should I just go to bi-weekly like messages, like, you know, because like, you know, like even though somebody can still be reached by my mediocre message and not having enough time to prepare as much as I want to, but you know, I think it's also important that people just, I don't even know who's watching and who's not watching, right? But the important thing is whether or not God can still use this message. Who knows, right? Like, just because I didn't have time to prepare doesn't mean God does not, you know, use it. So I think, like, you know, the important thing is that I keep practicing. You know, I don't give up the practice just because, hey, you know, one week I might have, you know, didn't have time to even do a message. Or I don't, just because I don't have as much hours or time that I want to prepare the message does not mean I should give up doing the message. So that's what I've come to today. So this is some of the notes that I've been doing. So let's talk about that since we're approaching the 20-minute mark. So the smaller screen is also to help me see the timer and also to make sure the USB port is working, because sometimes I lost audio apparently, as somebody pointed out in some of the other videos. So it's my notes. I will probably post it not in necessarily that blog, but I'll have another blog for me to post that, because this is actually my Google Drive, so you can't actually access directly unless I make it a public document. But anyways, notes are just notes, right? So I could make the notes a bit more comprehensive and add more, like, you know, more than just copy and pasted copyright stuff from Bible Gateway, whatever it is, and Bible Hub. But some of the passages that I was going to talk about was like, you know, Paul himself, he's like, you know, I also feel that God has allowed me to be weak, even though, you know, you look at me and you think, hey, you know, Paul's got it all together. You know, like he says in Philippians 3, like, you know, if I'm going to be boasting about how spiritual I am, you know, I got all these things, you know, like, you know, circumcised on the 8th day. The people, I was part of the tribe of Benjamin, whatever. Hebrew of Hebrews. Hey, if anybody should be boasting about their physical self, it should be me. So I think that's an important thing. We got to remember that, just like how in my preaching class when Michael was saying, we're treasures in jars of clay. Outside we may be like, brittle and jars of clay, but inside is what, God working through us was most important. And I think that's kind of why I flunked my sermon, is because I didn't realize, I tried too much, like, maybe like Ben was saying, I was trying very hard to impress Nose, or Dr. Nose, you call him. And not necessarily just Dr. Nose, but not just Michael, but maybe the whole class, like Stephen was saying, maybe, you're going through a room of seminary students, you kind of feel like, oh, you got to impress them, and, whatever, all that. And, and I think I realized that, humility can go far, sometimes you got to realize that, like, okay, so it says here, like, for example, permission to be human, like Connie was saying. So I did kind of put that in the notes as part of the screenshot, but I also still have it here. So it's bigger and easier for you to see. Not back to me, so yeah, recently I just decided to, I just go back to shaving, so I still, my facial hair doesn't look the same as it did, like, so I don't know, I just thought to myself, after the no shave, like, the Movember, I was like, I don't really look like the way it's kind of like, not set up yet, and it's like, I was like, oh, like, I don't know, am I gonna go, and I was like, alright, I'll just go back to weekly shaving. That's usually as much as I need, because it doesn't really grow back as much that I would shave every day anyways, but, so, so basically, if I wait till the last minute to record my sermon, it shows. so, therefore, there's a, full transparency about some of my weaknesses, in this sermon as part of the theme of, that it's okay to have weaknesses, but the thing is, we got to realize, weaknesses should not prevent us from following Jesus, as well as living the best as we can in our weaknesses to still try to witness for Jesus. Because you know what? Everybody's got, struggles. Even if you are not always in the position, or where you have people you can trust to be vulnerable, to talk about your struggles, it doesn't mean that you don't have them, because as humans, even Jesus experienced a sinful nature. Like, I don't think I have time to put that, or maybe I couldn't find it. I think it was probably Hebrews 10, not Hebrews 11, but anyways, I will probably post it in the notes about, like, because, like, they don't use NIV anymore, so I mean the NIV language has changed, so the wording is not always the same as what I'm used to searching for. Although I think if they still have the old version, I might be able to search for it that way. Yeah, because when I get weaknesses, I just get this one. Oh no, here, Hebrews 4, there we go. So it is Hebrews, just not 10 or 11. So yeah, so even Jesus himself was able to emphasize our weaknesses. And I think, as a human, I also thought about, like, yeah, I don't think I had time to paste it into the notes, but I also looked at, Jesus on the cross. And, some people think, oh, Father, Father, why are you forsaking me? Like, and there's a lot of debate that I won't have time to really go into much details. Like, oh, did Jesus actually, like, go to hell? Because, like, did he take on our weaknesses, and then he also became weak, and then he, that his soul was, like, burdened with our sin, that caused him to go to hell? Did God really forsake him? But in the Luke version, I think I did, let's possibly pull that up before I switched to this. So I think at some point I was on Luke 22, Luke 23, there we go, Luke 23. It doesn't actually say that, it says, you'll be with me in paradise today. So Jesus kind of saying, like, I'm not going to hell, I'm going to heaven, like, or maybe, like, paradise could be like, maybe some people think it's irony, right? It's like, oh, he's actually going to hell, but he's just saying, it can be paradise, because it's also foreshadowing. Some people believe that even those who are in hell are not there forever, which I would like to believe as well, because I tried hard, and sometimes you try hard, especially, like, some people are just very hard-hearted against God, like my own family members, and I don't even know, like, where my dad stood before he died, but whether he even did go home to be with the Lord. So I don't want to believe that that he is actually still after almost 9 years still possibly in hell. So I mean, and I don't know what the purgatory period is for people who don't believe in Jesus. To be honest, maybe it's 70 years, maybe it's 90 years, but I do agree with Bruxy that I don't think that a just God would necessarily want people to be condemned because like okay, like I think I'm not God, so I can't speak for how long he's gonna do it. But I think like I think that if you had let's say you had rejected God for 50 years and then you died. So even if you go, if even if you're under the old law where it's like an eye for an eye, an eye for an eye, so it makes sense that especially hell is even more suffering than earth, according to what most people believe. It makes sense that you only go to hell for 50 years, for 50 years to deny Jesus, right? You know what I mean? Like, it's not like it's not like you lived for like an eternity and you denied Jesus for an eternity. So I think like in that viewpoint that if God is just enough to still bring you to heaven even if you don't believe in Jesus while you're here on earth, then it makes sense to me that God wouldn't be like, hey, this guy, he denied me 200 years, so I'm going to keep him in hell for 200 years. I mean, actually, well, I mean, that would make sense, but most people don't live until 200, right? But what I'm saying is like, it's not like, okay, this guy died of cancer at 16, but never accepted me, so therefore, I want to make him be in hell for like 1,000 or 16,000 years. I was like, I just thinking, I'm not God, but I'm just thinking that seems a little bit harsh, under those like. But even though God's like, sometimes God's like, well, I gave a lot more grace to people on earth, but after even in the deathbed decision, you just still didn't come to me. Well, so I can't really say that God doesn't do that. But to me, it sounds very, very unloving and harsh. So I would think that even my dad, who may have decided that he, it's a complicated scenario which I won't get into. Maybe like in a different sermon, I could talk about like family and disbelief and struggles of family. But this sermon is more about personal struggles. So God struggles, everybody struggles, and I did struggle with that for a while. That and my identity is like am I really not a good student of the Bible? Am I not good at preaching? Am I not good at testifying? Just because I can't even get certain people like that I've been trying to. But the thing is, God says it's not, the results are not up to you. The results are up to me. So I think that's very important for us to keep in mind, which I've reminded people of recently, and they appreciated that. But doesn't mean you don't try. Like I said, you may be weak. I mean, you perhaps you're not. The way I like to think of it is everybody who attends the church is actually a theological student. Even though you may not go to like seminary like me right now, but you're still trying to learn some theology. So give yourself some props that you are also still a student of theology, even though you don't go to seminary. So but anyway, at the same time, like what I'm saying is, don't look at it be like I don't go to seminary, I don't have all the all the equipping and all that, or I've never been to seminary, I've never even taken a course of seminary or whatever. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't just look at that and just be like, hey, I'm not qualified to spread the gospel, because I don't think Jesus operates that way. I think Jesus is like, the qualification and the ability to bring the gospel, it's not really up to you alone, or how intelligent you are, how well you can present yourself, how well you can speak, whatever. The ability to bring the gospel is all really ultimately up to the Holy Spirit. But again, doesn't mean you don't have to put in your own effort, right? Like if you ever seen the the Woo's anniversary video, which I cannot play in the okay, well, like I said, if I play the audio, they're gonna hit me with copyright, because like Woo's wants to make all the advertising dollars and that, so I can't also. But anyway, so in this part of the song where it's like it's like, oh, it's like the Holy Spirit does all the work, we don't have to preach or whatever. But it was kind of funny, but it was a good parody. So like that part of the video, which is yes, it's like, we're not Jesus, he's the one who built the church, so we don't have to do anything. I like that idea. I kind of felt that they were kind of maybe getting on me a little bit on that. They're like, hey, you dropped out of GoTrack. What up with that? Because they did kind of mentioned an example of somebody dropping off Growth Track, and well, obviously, I don't think I'm the only person necessarily in that boat, but like I think that it spoke to me because I was like, oh no, oh snap, I did drop off Growth Track and like didn't want to commit, it was too much of a commitment, like they say later that in the video. So that's just a sneak peek, and hopefully they're not gonna slap me a copyright, even though I don't advertise on my videos anyways. So I don't believe in not that I couldn't use the income really, but just that I don't really believe that my video should contain ads at the moment, even though everybody else is doing it. But I just personally, I just want to keep my stuff ad free. That's just my own personal thing because my videos are long enough as it is, and during COVID, the last thing people want really is like, is more ads. Let's be honest. Even though I know that sometimes it's definitely the source of income can really be necessary for some people who are really struggling, especially some churches are struggling quite a bit right now. But at the same time, I'm just doing all this for the goodness of my heart, and obviously donations are welcome. If you leave comments, I only left my email on one of them, and I didn't get time to talking about like the First Corinthians 13 in Hebrew today because I didn't have time to prepare. But hopefully, maybe for next week, I can talk about God's grace in light of your, errors, because it also doubles back to my message I had done about like the fall of Adamah, which is the fall of mankind in the Hebrew wording. So I think I will do that. So maybe we can do that unless somebody has inspiration. I was like, I really want to hear about this, and you leave in the comments before I do my sermon that hey, let's go for it. Because like I realize that sometimes people leave comments, but apparently most of the time people don't. So if you want to leave a comment, don't feel bad. Like I said, we're all in this together with COVID, but we all have weaknesses regardless of and I really appreciate that Rich didn't hold back. When the pandemic happened, he's like, at the same time, maybe he also admits what other people admit, but he didn't just focus his message on that, where he's like, oh, well, I don't know why there's COVID, because obviously nobody really knows all the answers to why there's COVID. Although everybody, I think, experiences a personal revelation of what COVID can teach them, which is great, because I think like it's like, hey, what are my essentials in life outside of not having this, not having that, or not having that, right? I think everybody's learning stuff through COVID, and everybody's being challenged and also putting up new stuff. Try to find new hope in in this society right now. And I think it's a lot of people are on a timeout because of the economy or whatever. So or others' life circumstances. And I think that it's important for us to continue to seek after God. I know that I'm also on a timeout. I mean, pre-COVID, I was sort of closer. So I'm still okay. So I have to clarify that as well on some of my public platforms, but I'm still not married yet. The ring thing was sort of more of just like I had found my Lord of the Rings ring, and I really want to bring back my continued faith in the institution of marriage. So I got a little carried away, and maybe I kind of like presented some context. People might have misread that I had been married in the past, but that's not true. So if you've seen the Ephesians 5 or the week 8, whatever I call it, where it's like Jesus proposes, I did mention there that I am also only married to the church, just like Paul was, sort of in a sense, as part of imitating Christ, as part of Ephesians 5, as part of more context that I didn't have time to talk about in the sermon that I didn't do well in back in the preaching class. Well, practice makes progression, like Ben says. Hopefully some people are getting some elements of God's truth through some of the more recent stuff, especially like I said, my stuff is actually, I try to basic it down now because people are like, it's too complex. You're talking to people like, if you're not talking to seminary students, they're not going to understand what you're talking about. So I've been trying to go a lot of the opposite, trying to go very simple, not very theological, but still kind of throw in the Jesus here and there, and the scripture, and also to hopefully like encourage you to be more Berean style and just kind of study it for yourself, as I didn't talk, as I mentioned in some of my other sermons, but to kind of also kind of bring back the whole theme of forgiveness and fresh starts. I will talk about that more and do more theology presentation in the next message. So we've gone half an hour. I need to get headed to bed, and I will catch you guys next time. So thank you for watching, and hopefully I'll try time before the end of the weekend to post up those notes so that I can post the link for you guys to follow.